To encourage faithfulness and partnership through giving, it is essential to teach about giving as a sign of spirituality. This presentation explores how giving, whether through tithe, offerings, or donations, is a powerful expression of our faith and recognition of God's ownership over all things. Signs are often outward expressions of inner realities, just like exchanging wedding rings or offering a bouquet of flowers are signs of love and commitment. Our giving is a sign of our spirituality, of our deep gratitude and loyalty to God. Let's go back to the beginning, more precisely in Eden. Genesis chapter 3 verses 4 and 5 describes how God gave Adam and Eve a very simple test. He asked them to refrain from eating from one specific tree in the garden. The tree wasn't poisonous, but refraining from eating was a sign of their acknowledgement of God's ownership and their faithfulness. Unfortunately, they failed to keep the sign. Our existence as humans happens in two dimensions: time and space. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 20, verse 20, God gives us a clear sign of His lordship over time: the Sabbath, dedicating a portion of time to acknowledge God as Lord. How can we acknowledge God's lordship over the space or the material world? Ellen White writes, he asks us to acknowledge Him as the giver of all things, and for this reason He reserves a tenth for Himself besides gifts and offerings. Congregational giving is not just about giving money to support the church. It's a spiritual act of acknowledgement of God's lordship. Throughout both the Old and the New Testament, we have several examples of giving as an expression of spirituality. King Hezekiah's spiritual revival, described in 2 Chronicles 31, included both the restoration of corporate worship and faithful giving. Similarly, in the book of Nehemiah, giving and revival were closely tied. The people committed to giving their tithe and offerings to support God's work. Storehouses were established. In the book of Malachi, God calls His people to return to Him because they had backslidden. And part of that return is through the faithful return of tithe and offerings. God says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse. Giving has always been a sign of spiritual revival. In the New Testament, Jesus taught that our use of money reflects our spirituality. To the rich young ruler, He said, give it all, inviting him to a higher spiritual calling. And when Jesus visited Zacchaeus, the generous giving of Zacchaeus that followed was a sign of his experience of salvation and transformed heart. Do you know that giving is even more than a sign of spirituality? Ellen White writes, constant, self-denying benevolence is God's remedy for selfishness. Our giving is more than a sign of spirituality. It is a catalyst for spiritual revival, both in our hearts and in our communities. As spiritual leaders, are we not called to help others recognize God as owner and Lord? One tangible way of sharing this revival message is to invite God's people, our church members, to return a faithful tithe and offerings as signs of true spirituality.